Social media has become a part of everyday life. It's increased the size of our world, and now we live as both a physical and digital citizen in this expanding global community. Over the past 4 years, I have seen the growth of the platforms where we seem to spend a lot of our time, as I also grew my own presence online. I've seen the good and the bad throughout my time, shared the stories and heard stories I probably wouldn't have if I couldn't interact with those across the world. Everyone forms an identity online, and it often becomes a part of who we are. But what happens if you wake up one day and that's all gone? Well, it seems you've been cancelled. So join me as we speak to a few people about the idea of cancel culture and gather their insight on what happens, how it feels, and why it's become so prevalent online.
No, it's a lot to take in. It's designed to know when, don't wait. Don't be scared when away, paralysis, you stayed at the gate.
What is this cancel culture like?
Cancel culture, I think, is complex.
And it's coming to a neighborhood near you. If you think it's just for celebrities, no.
The way of me making change is to be as judgmental as possible about other people.
And people are so ready to do it without any kind of thought to the repercussions of their actions.
In an era where everyone is online, everyone is a public figure.
No one is safe.
This documentary is brought to you by Manscaped.com. Christmas came early this year because I've been given the new Perfect Package 4.0 by Manscaped. Manscaped has created the world's first all-in-one men's grooming kit. It includes the Lawnmower 4.0, a waterproof cordless trimmer which is built with advanced skin-safe technology, so you don't have to fear when going down under. And also has a neat little LED light so you can actually see what you're doing down there. As well as that, there's also something for the stocking, Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver Ball Toner Spray. Nice. So if you're like me and have absolutely no idea what to get people for Christmas, the Perfect Package by Manscaped is literally the perfect solution. What's better is for a limited time, you'll also get 2 free gifts, the shared travel bag and the Manscaped anti-chafing boxer briefs. It's literally giftception. So head over to manscaped.com and use code BWC to get 20% off plus free international shipping and those 2 free gifts. Now that the balls are secure, it's time to explore the strange world of cancel culture.
So cancel culture means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
And I think everything has kind of been equated to this one baseline.
You did a bad thing and it's kind of treated the same across the board.
It's ostracizing as a result of someone's behaviour.
Cancel culture is the new buzzword on the block, a phenomenon synonymous with the digital world, and it's something we still don't quite understand. But from what we know so far, it has a massive effect and relevance on the way we communicate, and there's no end in sight. But what exactly is it?
We hung out in packs, didn't we? And I think everyone had to conform. And if you didn't conform, you were chucked out of the pack and you were probably more vulnerable to predators.
But instead of roaming the plains of the Sahara, most people now find themselves browsing the feeds of social media.
So you fast forward hundreds of thousands of years and here we are using platforms where it's kind of similar. So people want to conform, want to be a majority in their belief system. And if they're not, or if they do something to almost threaten the pack by doing something stupid, or saying the wrong thing or being horrible to someone, people will ostracize.
To stop giving support to someone or something because of a perceived objectionable action or opinion is the general consensus of what cancel culture is. But it's not something you can really slap a label on and call it a day, because it's constantly evolving along with the online culture it's a part of. There are cases where the freedom of social media has toppled powerful people and introduced some form of change or justice. It's actually held people accountable, but as it has become more normalized and a regular part of the social media experience, it's lost its fundamental purpose.
Cancel culture is almost entirely ineffective at having any sort of long-lasting consequence or really just sort of any productive discussion around these ideas.
I think since 2016, we have seen a particularly rapid change in what the majority perceives as acceptable ways of speaking and behaving, emphasized online with how people react to certain issues. Now, this ideal is enforced through mass outrage and targets literally anyone who does something to break the unwritten rules.
Rather than look at a problem, that is deep rooted and has consequences in people's real lives, the phenomenon of online cancel culture is more so identifying fragments of offensive conduct that someone has exhibited online and then focusing a lot of outrage in order for those people to piggyback off of it and get a lot of positive engagement on social media for themselves. But that doesn't actually result in necessarily any sort of real life consequence. A lot of times the main Twitter character of the day will just sort of disappear when they face a lot of online backlash, and then nothing will really happen to them. You know, people have lost their jobs because of cancel culture. People have lost stature and prominence because of cancel culture. As we've sort of seen this cycle play out over and over again, those things don't necessarily last. A lot of times the consequences of cancel culture are pretty fleeting. And unless it aligns with some sort of actual like judicial action or legislative action, those things are less common than just having like this outpouring of outrage.
In essence, those with power and influence remain untouchable yet again, and the consequences really only come when non-online entities take an interest. Instead of being a way for people to come together and challenge the real issues in society, it seems the culture has turned into its own sort of internet genre.
You've seen this phenomenon just grow and grow and grow because the people who are benefiting from it are oftentimes people who are forming online personalities around sort of governing these types of discourse. And that is what they do to either boost their own individual engagement, weighing in on the topic of the day, weighing in on the villain of the day. That's just a way that a lot of people have created their online personalities.
Obviously, there's a big problem when something that's supposedly meant to hold others accountable is capitalized upon by those leading the charge. It brings into question the integrity of those who perpetuate this culture of directing outrage towards a different individual or company on a regular basis.
But of course, now you also have all of these personalities who have built their entire brand and their entire platform off of just participating in this type of discourse. So they're not going to go away, and they're incentivized sometimes through monetization to keep having that sort of discourse over and over again.
The platform where this commonly takes place is, of course, Twitter.
It's a social media I once loved because it allowed me to connect with many different people in many different areas that I was in, and it allowed me to connect with my own community.
Say a thing, instant feedback, no editing, whatever required.
The freedom presented by Twitter is what makes it so popular for those who need to communicate with an audience of people they serve. At the end of the day, it's the gateway to the global conversation, and various discourse takes place every second. But it's also a business and a platform for people to grow their online presence, and that in itself presents an issue.
Because of the way that Twitter works, the way that it sort of prioritizes engagement, whether it's positive, extremely positive, or extremely negative, there's this phenomenon of the main character of Twitter where almost every day there's some new discourse that's cropping up because someone said or did something that has caused controversy. And so now you have huge swaths of the website's user base reacting to that in order to sort of game in and play in on whatever that day's controversy is.
Twitter's where like the discourse happens. It's all about just words and spreading ideas. Any idea can catch on if it's fun enough, or if it's, especially if it's lampooning someone popular. Everyone loves that. It's a bit of popcorn. Whether it's true or not, we'll find out later.
A great example of this unnecessary outrage was when the British creator G. Nelly held a birthday party featuring a few other creators. Over the past year and a bit, it's become topical for large gatherings held by personalities online to be scrutinized for whether they follow some universal standard of pandemic-safe measures. In cases where it was happening during critical stages of spread, it was justified to criticize. But G. Nelly and co. were out celebrating in late August. Twitter users took issue with this because they were seen having fun without masks and social distancing, despite the fact they were well within the guidelines of what's acceptable in the UK, and also took measures to ensure they were protected. As Michael puts it,
I don't think it's the average influencer, YouTuber, TikToker, whatever's job to be perfect. It's just like fucking unrealistic.
The glaring problem with cancel culture events is the fact they're almost always abstract. There's no emotion, despite the fact it is the result of emotion. Whoever is on the receiving end is just a handle people can direct their outrage towards, and there's often no thought given to what happens to that person. That's not saying outrage is an unjustified response to something, but at what point does it become beyond what's actually needed to make a point? The constant erosion of accountability online is emphasized by the fact these cycles are becoming more frequent and any positive conversation less. But as frequent as it is, not many people can say they've experienced a mass outrage event, and so I talked to a couple of people who have.
I think it was very much an in-the-moment thing.
James, better known as John Swan, was at the center of one of the most peculiar dramas of the year, and as a result, was in a state of limbo. So I talked to him about what he did and the ramifications of his actions on his life over the past few months. Earlier this year, James went toe-to-toe with one of the most popular Minecraft YouTubers, Dream. So popular he could post a one-word tweet and trend on the platform because of it. Engaging with someone who has that much influence was always going to be a massive task. And what spurred the feud was a comment from Dream on a post on Reddit, which had about 20 upvotes when it first went down.
And from the moment that was sent to the moment I typed up that response that I would post on Twitter shortly afterwards, the gap of that was 17 minutes. 17 minutes to construct something in my head to try and make it all go away. It wasn't, I'm going to try and lie to everyone. It was very much just in the moment, typing something out, trying to make it all go away. It's that one moment, in those 17 minutes, were the 17 minutes that pretty much destroyed my entire reputation online.
Those 17 minutes turned into 11 days, where James spent nearly 2 weeks trying to maintain a lie. The lie itself was something so trivial, no one questioned its truth. Dream didn't hold back either. His response to James on Twitter pushing John Swan to the top of Twitter trending in the US.
Not one person is equipped to have literally hundreds of thousands of people come after you in the way that it happened to me. When Dream did his stream, he had 300,000 people watching me getting torn apart. Like a tiny creator, 170,000 subscribers, getting torn apart by a creator that had over 10 million on a stream that was double my own subscriber count of live people watching. That is just an experience that you can never quite describe, and it's not a good feeling.
The saga would continue to the point James released an 18-page Google Doc, along with a fully edited audiobook version on February the 24th.
It was supposed to be the last thing anyone would say, so I would concede on a lot of things, and I would basically leave it. I wanted it all to end. I could have made a video, I could have streamed about it, I could have, capitalized on it even more, but I didn't do that because that was never what the intention of that was.
A further 3 days would pass until it started to fall apart.
I had family over during this period, and when all of this was going down, I was supposed to be going out to dinner. It was like 4:30 in the afternoon. I was about to go out to dinner. That was the moment where everything sort of turned on its head, and Nick Diorio dropped the thread that would go on to sort of pave my way for the end of my YouTube career, you could say, in that sense. And I get the notification on my phone, and I absolutely panic, and I called him up and I asked him to delete it because I didn't know what else to do.
I had to. I definitely did.
No.
I don't know what you really expect from me here. I have like a moral truth capacity thing.
What? No, dude.
What is the way, dude? How do I do it better?
This is not the way. Fucking delete that immediately.
What did I do wrong? What's wrong about it? What do you want me to, what would I change?
This is not the time. This is seriously not the time.
What do you mean?
This is... No. Just... What the fuck, dude? Obviously he wasn't going to do that, and I think I knew that he wasn't going to do that anyway, but I still tried, and I kind of went over in my head about what I was going to do for about 30 minutes, probably, maybe a little bit longer, and I just wrote out the apology, basically saying, there's just don't even try to defend me. There's nothing to defend me on here.
John Swan, this is not gonna work, all right? You making this post saying, you know what, guys, I'm sorry I let you all down and I lied to everybody. I kept digging myself in a deeper hole and, I'm taking accountability now. The title of this is Taking Accountability. No, motherfucker.
When all of this was going down, in the morning when I woke up from my terrible sleep, I made the mistake of logging onto Twitter and checking what was going down, and it just was not very pretty. And that was the moment I just deactivated all of my accounts, because I knew that if they were up, I would look, and I just didn't want to see any of it. And I didn't check Twitter at all for maybe 3 weeks to a month. I seriously did not look. I didn't check, I didn't search my name, I didn't want to see anything. I've still to this day watched none of the videos on my controversy. Maybe I've watched maybe 5 minutes of some of them, but I've not sat through a full video. I've not watched them. I don't want to see them because I don't want to think about it.
One of the most interesting things about controversies online is the disconnect there is from the human element and what the person in the crosshairs actually feels. When I cover stories, I'm not necessarily thinking about the person, because I feel justified in attaching what they did wrong to their online brand or persona. But there's always the other side, and these situations do actually have an impact.
Whenever I hit a new month, when it's something is the 27th, I always, that's the day I was exposed. It's 7 months or it's 8 months now. And I always think about that. Those dates never quite leave.
When setting out on this investigation, I wanted to look into the effect of online backlash beyond the screen and how it impacts a person's real-world life along with their digital presence. Unsurprisingly, being shouted at by thousands of people on Twitter is just as challenging as being shamed in the middle of the street.
Yeah, that was a really, really terrible period. Obviously when you are cut off from your friends and your job and your online reputation is very much in the air, I had a lot of questions about where I was going to go, and I had a lot of doubt about whether I would even return. This was a very difficult period, and definitely a time in my life where I was not happy with myself or with life in general. But there were some positive things that came out of it. I ended up spending a lot more time with family and going out a lot more, which was, I think, something I needed. I had a bit of a Twitter addiction at the time, and that kind of stopped that overnight. If I could go back in time and change everything that happened, I would change it in a heartbeat, because this has all had a profound effect on me mentally and reputationally and financially. It has all been a massive hit for me.
Most critics suggest James got what he deserved and shouldn't be surprised about what happened, but at the same time, no one is really prepared for someone with as much influence as Dream to put your name into disrepute for something you did an entire year earlier, when you yourself had no online presence at all.
This was not fun. Nothing was fun about this. In those, 10 or 11 days where I had lied and had to continue doing stuff to prop up this lie that I had created, it was one of the most stressful periods of my whole life. It was less stressful after I had been exposed and didn't have to think about that anymore. It felt like a big burden had been lifted. During those 11 days, it was like a constant feeling of like I could never quite relax or like calm down. I couldn't sleep properly. Like it was very much a like always on edge kind of deal, and always thinking about what the next thing was going to do.
The psychological impact and the strain on mental health is definitely an important part of understanding the damage of mass outrage and cancel culture events. But at the same time, there is material damage too. In James's case, his career is his brand and reputation, and he pretty much lost it all in less than 2 weeks.
Overnight, I think I lost in one day 4,000 subscribers. And over time, over those few months where I took the break from online, I lost about 10,000. Because I keep on losing subscribers, YouTube doesn't push out my videos anymore, which completely stops me from being able to get views and make money, which is my job.
Now, he isn't entirely held back from finding work because of this, but his online brand is still important and a part of his identity.
I'm kind of been the topic of a lot of shit talking online. Some of it justified, some of it not. But it is, very much, I became overnight the popular person to hate, and it's definitely not something that I'll be recovering from, I don't think, anytime soon. I was this terrible monster, and psychopath, sociopath, that how could he lie to his friends, and how could he do this, and how could he do that? Do I have something wrong with me? Is there something like not right? But I think over time I've realized, people lie for many different reasons. This isn't something new. I think a lot of my friends kind of made the joke like, well, people don't just lie on the internet. That's just not something that happens. Obviously, it's pretty common, and looking back now, what I did was obviously bad, but a lot of people have gotten cancelled for a lot worse than what I did, and they've still managed to regain their careers.
What James did was very stupid, and I can understand why people would think there was malicious intent behind bringing a relatively unseen comment to Twitter and making a big deal about it. At the same time, I think he made a mistake, and was very much held accountable for it. It was very much a regrettable moment, and in the moment he crumbled and forgot everything he stood for.
It was just trying to make whatever he was saying stop, and trying to discredit and devalue anything that he was saying. The 17 minutes that I thought about it was not enough time, and I was not in the right mind to think about things practically, and so I propagated this entire lie.
James's experience shows how fragile online reputations are, and what happens when you don't hold yourself accountable for your own actions. But it also highlights how unforgiving and lacking in empathy the cancel culture phenomenon is. I wouldn't conflate what he did with the likes of Mini Lad or James Charles, but compared to them, he's experienced a greater impact for something so trivial. He made a mistake, but most people who are cancelled have, which is why there's an issue with it. Where's the nuance? Beyond the ignorance of the individual, there's another side to cancel culture, and it's significantly worse than being shouted at for a mistake. It's a byproduct of the rampant misinformation online and has severe consequences for not only those in the firing line, but the greater online community in general. The cancellations based on a lie.
It was actually really funny because I was like insanely high when it broke, so led to quite the paranoid time.
Michael's story is probably one of the most referenced cases of cancel culture within the YouTube commentary sphere, and it came just after the events of the Tati Westbrook and James Charles fiasco. On June 10, 2019, a former girlfriend of Michael released a twitlonger detailing allegations of misconduct from less than 3 years prior.
Like, I didn't look at my phone, I didn't look at any social media for days, which I think is the best possible approach I could have taken. Looking at that and like stewing away in that. But yeah, it was like a sick feeling to my stomach.
When we perceive that we're going to be rejected by people or judged harshly by people, there's a vulnerability that comes over people and you can get very anxious.
I don't know, I think that's one of the biggest human fears is like being socially ostracized. You know, like we put such weight in what other people think, and to feel like the whole world is against you is like one of the most horrible fucking feelings you can imagine.
And I think when our anxiety levels go up, often in our minds, we go to worst case scenario in our heads. We think, oh my God, no one likes me anymore. No one's ever going to hire me again. You know, everything's going to be affected.
I thought I'm just going to have to leave the internet because I was looking, you know, a few days after I began looking at Reddit, I began looking at like Twitter and everything, and just thought this is like irrecoverable. Like, shit, I can't do anything about this. Like, I'm dead.
People often only realise how important their image is when someone almost ruins it or sabotages it.
The response to the twitlonger was overwhelming, with many large creators who were seen as close friends of Michael tweeting their support towards the allegations, compounding the credibility of what was published. Michael's reputation and his Slazo brand were instantly tainted, and a short statement to Keemstar didn't help dissuade the popular opinion.
I kind of wish I pumped the brakes a bit more before saying that.
A follow-up twitlonger and stronger denouncements from those who were considered his friends all but condemned his position. The immediate effects were evident. A mass exodus of followers, not only just on Twitter, where the statements were made, but on his YouTube channel too. From here, Michael had two options.
Sometimes that person who's been cancelled might do things to redeem themselves. You know, some people run away from it, I guess. Other times people will jump into it and explain more.
First people I went to, obviously friends and family, kind of explain myself to them, because if anyone deserves an explanation, it's, you know, the people who genuinely trusted me in my life, you know. And then next person to go to was lawyers, and kind of see my legal options. They recommended I didn't engage in like any of the allegations. I didn't go into any detail. They could only give advice from a legal point of view, and from that point of view, it's almost always better to just say I didn't do shit. Obviously I didn't end up doing that because my reputation is super important to me, and I decided to prioritize that and set the record straight.
On June 28, 18 days after the initial allegations, Michael released a video on his YouTube channel titled My Side.
I wanted to make a video regarding the situation as of a couple weeks ago. Some of you might be wondering why I took so long to make this response. That's mainly because I wanted a good but belated response. I've got a list of things here that I want to talk about. So I didn't want to rush it, basically. A lot of the things being said are just blatantly untrue, and when I first saw them, I wasn't sure how to respond. It took me a while to recoup from this and think about how to go forward. It really shocked me. I hope this video has cleared up some of your confusion and some of the questions you had, and I'm sorry about this whole thing.
Almost instantly, the momentum of the cancellation flipped. Michael's video and the information he was able to use highlighted the disingenuous nature of the claims. However, more importantly, is the large creators, his supposed friends, became the attention of the outrage mob.
The cancelled became the canceller in that way, I suppose, which I had to kind of really hold myself back from like doing the dancing on their graves that they kind of did on mine.
I don't believe he's innocent. The stuff that Michael admitted to is stuff that makes me not want to be friends with somebody who is capable of doing those things, even the things he admitted to. I really hope he gets help, because nobody should just carry on doing what he did.
To send people out them in such a hateful kind of brigade in that kind of way, yeah, definitely did kind of get flipped on everyone involved.
The reaction was immense. People were still irritated with the James Charles situation, which at the time was the pinnacle of cancel culture. What came out over the following month really pissed everyone off. There was a massive divide in what people wanted. Some wanted a public apology, whilst others called for the figurative heads of those exposed as conspirators in a plot to destroy Michael.
So yeah, it's definitely a two-way thing, and it's just a dangerous thing to be involved in any respect. I don't recommend that anyone does. Not worth it.
Although Michael salvaged his reputation, it will always be tainted in some way, and the effects of the situation go way beyond his image.
It was harder for me to trust people, specifically like YouTubers and all that. Like afterwards I met up with Colossal is Crazy and like Anything for Views, and you know, hung out with them, and they were really nice. They were, you know, they were friendly and all that, but you know, so were the other guys. That relationship with other YouTubers just didn't feel like the same again for like another year and a half, 2 years.
The personal level effects on Michael are the things we don't really get to see. Even in follow-up videos months after, it's hard to understand the deeper impact of his cancellation.
It was hard for me to trust other people. And if, like, even if they didn't get back to me in like half an hour, I'd be like, shit, are they following me? Did they block me?
Most of his concern was towards his online life. However, offline, it was a bit more simple.
Thankfully, everyone in my like personal life was really nice, was really, nobody really dropped me. I have a good circle of friends and family. Really, if anything, it kind of strengthened my bond with them and the trust I have in the real people in my life, which is probably better than trusting a bunch of niche internet micro celebrities.
But even months after it was supposedly over, Michael was still stuck in that moment.
It was like an all-consuming thing, even for like way after that. Everything was about the controversy. It was about beating these allegations. It was about watching everyone involved to make sure to see like, are they gonna make a response? You know, that's another thing. Like, I was expecting a response from them, and like weeks turned into months, turned into, you know, years now, and it's like, for the first couple months I was like, where is this response? It's coming. So I didn't really feel like I'd beat the allegations, because I felt like a round 2 was coming. So everything was about like preparing for that, I guess. I was just kind of in limbo for a couple months there. I was just like, well, I guess they're not responding. I just went to Tasmania. I went to an Airbnb with like a bunch of sheep and just hung out with them for a while in like the mountains. It was actually pretty sweet. So I just lived like a monk in like a cave for a little bit. And then I guess just slowly, you know, went back to normal, went back to trusting people. But it took a while, because some of those YouTubers, one in particular was like best friend. Like I considered him one of my closest mates at the time. So to see him just like completely flip on me, you know, it kind of leaves a dark cloud over your head for a while, but you come to realize that the internet, and especially like niche communities on the internet, are only a small part of this life. There's so much more.
It's now been over 2 years since it all happened, and Michael is yet to return to public life. Fleeting posts here and there, and an unrecognized YouTube schedule is all we've seen. His decision to remain behind the scenes has seen its rewards, but there's always that desire to get back to the way things were before.
Yeah, everything was a bit on display and all that, and I've really kind of gone back from that, and I don't know, in a way I do miss it, but there's so much more to life than that. I might go back to it one day. I've been thinking, like, if I go back, what will I do? Because I don't want to just go back to tearing people down again. It's just not something I can really embody anymore. So if I come back, it'll be a whole new Slazo. So, yeah. But I just need to figure out who that guy is.
Moving on from these situations takes time, and James still struggles to get past the comments pulling back on his controversy.
People had already forgiven and forgot about things. My own friends, it took them 2 weeks, but in the public eye, it's 7 months, and I still get people talking about it. I don't care about Dream, I care that he lied to his friends, but my friends forgave me after 2 weeks. Like, this was very much, a lot of what is said is a lot of people just getting mad and upset over literally something that does not concern them.
Most people have already moved on. Attention shifts onto the next problem, and people often lose interest in what they were angry about a few weeks earlier. However, those on the other side, like James, are stuck in that moment.
I wish I could say something and be like, everyone already forgave me that I directly affected. Why should you be upset? But, I think if I say anything on my platforms, I'll just get clowned even more. Every time I bring it up, it just seems to make it worse. Like, there's nothing I can do. I kind of just have to stay quiet. There's a lot of things I want to say about many situations that were brought up in this drama, but I can't say anything about them because people will just accuse me of trying to, rile up some more drama or trying to, get some sort of a gotcha. I mean, that's not really what I want to do. A lot of it is just, I want to clear things up, but I can't do that.
The lasting impact is also evident. Michael struggling to talk and meet new people.
I found myself really overthinking even the message that I send. Like, is this something that can be screenshotted or that? It certainly did affect relationships. It certainly did affect the trust I had in people. And to this day, the way I text people, I kind of, for the first year and a half, I was kind of really thinking about each message.
Despite the problems he faced and still has, he's definitely an example of what could be.
I mean, I'm probably the luckiest cancel culture victim ever because I probably came out a little better than I went in. I do see the odd comment here and there being isn't this that child rapist? But honestly, that's a pretty rare thing. And it does suck to see that, and it kind of freaks me out that people believe that. But I'm kind of the martyr of the cause, which I think there's worse things to be.
Michael and James have different experiences of this phenomenon, the latter meeting the wrath of the mob because of mistakes he made, and Michael facing something completely out of his control. But it shows us how powerful Twitter can be at disrupting the real lives of those who have an online presence, and who don't necessarily hold as much weight or influence in the real world. The further down you go, the more impact it has. Real people have lost their jobs or reputation because of what happens online, and each case has a different level of justification. It takes more than a platform for this to happen, and there are people who engage in this behaviour on a regular basis.
If you're constantly online scrolling for things that people could possibly do and jumping onto it, it usually comes from a place where they're not feeling with themselves. Because I think, most busy individuals who've got a lot of things to do, they are not engaged in that as much. So I think there's a bit of a psychology around those sorts of behaviours.
And you face being, discarded from your own community if you choose to speak out about things and you choose to be ridiculed. A lot of people that are on Twitter that aren't creators, I don't think it's unfair to say that a lot of these people probably lack a lot of social lives in the real world, so they turn to online situations, and obviously they want to be accepted by those online groups, so what do? They conform to their beliefs.
So what we have are large unaccountable groups using Twitter to essentially push their agenda, sometimes understandable and others just unreasonable and aggressive, which has created an entirely divisive and toxic culture on the platform.
What could Twitter do as a platform to improve the environment? If someone starts getting an overwhelming amount of negative replies, Twitter could shut off the replies on the tweet automatically, or Twitter could do something to decentivize people engaging with that tweet. We've seen TikTok has taken steps to do this, where on TikTok, if you start getting too popular too quickly, it will actually move you down in the algorithm, because it wants it to be a more democratic platform where everyone gets the opportunity to be the center of attention. But I feel like we're in this very experimental stage of social media building, where people are still trying to work out how can we affect the psychology of this platform from the design back end.
However, cancel culture is just a symptom of the issues growing online, and combined with other problems such as political polarization and misinformation.
If you look at it from a pessimistic standpoint, it really does seem like these platforms have brought out some of the worst facets of just the way people interact with each other. We have to look at ways to curb that, because where we're at right now is not where we want to be as an informed democratic society.
But talk of regulation often leaves people uneasy, and for good reason. The proposed laws often don't make sense and take away from whatever freedoms we may have. A recent push from activists is to take away anonymity online, meaning everyone would have to provide ID to use social media.
But those things are just they fundamentally don't align with what the internet allows you to do. I think there's a really big gap between where our governments and our politicians are and the technological advancements that the internet has created. It really does feel like, as of right now, it's a self-policing system. And that raises a lot of ethical questions about who do we give the power to police within these systems. And this sort of mob justice that has formed, this sort of cancel culture phenomenon that has emerged from that, is proving to be ineffective time and time again. So I do think there will be a greater push for people to look at the platforms themselves and say, well, you created this mess, so now you have to get us out of it.
There has been some effort to mitigate the issues imposed by mass outrage events, Twitter adding pop-ups to warn you if you're about to enter a potentially heated conversation. Likewise, they've also started to warn people when their tweet may cause them to face backlash. Pretty much a preemptive "we told you so" if and when it inevitably happens. The only real way to avoid this cancel culture is to be aware of what you do and how you present yourself. A lot of people want to call it consequence culture, but hardly anyone who deserves to face consequences actually do. And that's probably where the phenomenon will fall apart.
It's hard to talk about where we are right now. It's easier to talk about things in retrospect. It absolutely feels like people are getting burnt out on the concept of cancel culture. It seems as if people are burnt out on the idea of constantly being outraged. The discourse is going to continue to shift rapidly into the near future.
So it's really up to you if you want to avoid the wrath of the online crowd while it's still a thing.
Someone could find something that you did 10, 15 years ago, twist it around in some way, and then bring it to present day, and you're going about your business, living your life, and suddenly, boom.
The average person doesn't have the platform that an influencer does to come out and correct the issue. I was very lucky to have the channel and be able to make my side and tell my side. What they do wrong that they get cancelled for will have so much more of a platform than whatever correction they try to make,
There has to be a level of severity to the things that you do. But for, most people online, you're probably safe. But if you do something terribly atrocious, something terrible could befall you. So you have to be very careful about what you post online.
Turn the computer off if you're getting cancelled, especially if it's wrong, because it'll be just infuriating to read that about yourself. Wait until you're less emotional. don't feel the need to respond immediately, or you'll make a messy response, which a lot of the people will see and just think, they're guilty, and move on. So make sure your first response back is a deadly accurate one. Don't be too vindictive, just correct the thing and move on.
It takes a bit of suffering, sleepless nights and wandering, before you make it safely to the end. The end. There's things in life you simply need to know, but sun and rain and trust in letting go. It takes a bit of suffering, sleepless nights and wandering, before you make it safely to the end. Before you make it safely to the end.